So we've looked a little bit at the basic settings uh, and basic structure of your Google Classroom in past videos. Let's now take time and look at adding resources to your Google Classroom. And before we jump into what types of resources you can add, I want to introduce you to the workflow that I use when I structure a Google Classroom. And this is a matter of choice. This is what I prefer to do, but Google Classroom is quite flexible. If you have other things you prefer, go ahead and do that. Here's what I do. So I start by setting up my classroom, course description, and settings. We saw that in past videos. I then create a topic for each course meeting, and I'll show you how to do that once we look at the workflow. In its entirety, topics are essentially sections of your Google Classroom, so I make one for each time the course meets. I add assignments and material, and the way I use assignments is to post boilerplate resource categories within each topic. So for each course meeting, for instance, I would have one assignment for required readings. It's like a folder of required readings, one assignment of recommended readings, one assignment of other resources, an agenda, and my slide deck if I want to offer that to students. Next, I would create quiz assignments and rubrics. I use quiz assignments for all of my graded assignments, and again, I'll show you these in an actual Google Classroom in a minute. Lastly, of course, collect and grade student work, and importantly, all student submissions and grading are done within your classroom for all assignments, which is very nice and makes things easy to find down the line. So let's take a second and look at adding topics to your Google Classroom. We'll go to my example classroom, and here we are in the Classwork tab, the heart of your Google Classroom, and you can see that I've already added one topic. A topic is this large category heading, and I structure them as the date that the course will meet, and then the general topic for that course meeting. And so I'll add one for each time that my course meets. To do that, go up to this Create button, hit Create, and go down to Topic, Create a Topic. So let's go ahead and make one for the second course meeting. We'll say meets May 14th, 2020, and the topic will just be topic of week 2, since this isn't a real course. Hit Add, and you'll see it comes up, but it's at the top of my page. I would rather these be in chronological order so my students see the topic for May 8th before they see the topic for May 14th. So, this is very nice about Google Classroom. If I hover over this, click on it, I can just drag it to where I want it on the page. And that's true about virtually everything in your Google Classroom, all different types of things that you add. If you want to move where they're at, click on them and just drag them to the right location. So let's look now at adding assignments, these sort of boilerplate resources and materials. And let's look a little bit more at what these things are before we actually see how to add them to your classroom. So there are 4 types of things you can add: assignments, questions, quiz assignments, and materials. Here we'll look at the first 2, assignments and questions. For assignments, I post resources that I want students to have. I use assignments to post ungraded resources, so readings that I want them to read before class, videos that I want them to watch before class or in class, podcasts, recorded lectures that I may have done for my students to watch asynchronously, that type of thing. So let's go to the classroom and actually add some of these. So we have week 2, and I'll show you in week 1 the assignments that I make for every week. The first one is required reading, the second one is recommended reading, the third one is other resources, and the last one is slides. So let's go ahead and make required reading for week 2. I'm going to actually copy and paste some of the text from week 1. So if I open the week 1 resource, required reading, you'll see that what I have here is an explainer where I list what the reading is called, the title of the PDF that contains that reading. I tell my students what pages to read, or I tell them read all pages depending on what I want, and I give them the APA citation for that reading. And I do that for each thing that is required reading, so that this is a folder of all of the required reading for that day. Now, I want to copy and paste this structure so that I don't have to rewrite it for my next week. I'm going to hit View Assignment, click on Instructions, and I have the actual text of my assignment. Command C, because I'm on a Mac, go back to my class, and to actually make this assignment for the next week, go up to Create, you use this for most things, hit Create, Assignment, and I get this blank assignment template. So I'm making the required reading assignment. These are ungraded. I use plain assignments for everything ungraded and quiz assignments for everything graded. That's a personal choice. This is for the week of the 14th, classes on the 14th this week, and so I will select the 14th as the due date for this reading. The reason I give this a due date even though it's a reading is so that it shows up on my class Google Calendar. And if you're not familiar with that, go back to the first video in this series, the Google Classroom Basics video, to see how to use the Google Course Calendar. Under Topic, I can pick any of the topics I've created. So here, I want this for week 2. I'm going to pick May 14th as my topic. In here, I post the relevant information about the readings. I would type this in. Then I'm going to add the files that contain the readings to this assignment. I have these files in my Google Drive. If I were posting a web page for people to read, I would use the link option. If I had the files on my computer itself, such as on my desktop or somewhere in my hard drive, I would pick the file option. And if I was picking a YouTube video for students to watch, I would pick the YouTube option. We'll try some of these out later, but for now, the PDFs that I want to attach are in my Google Drive, so I'm going to click that. Let's look at My Drive and navigate to these readings. Now there are 2 readings that I want to attach to this. I can actually click one, hit Shift and hold it, click the second one, it selects both, and I can add them both at the same time. And so you'll see those PDFs I just added from my personal Google Drive. The next thing to think about here is this drop-down. This determines what access students have to this file. So students can view file. That means they can view it in your classroom. Students can edit file. That means they can change it. For instance, if I had posted a Google Doc, they would be able to type in there. Or the option that is most useful to me, the vast majority of the time, is this option, make a copy for each student. I'm going to pick that for both of these. And what that does is provides the student, it's essentially like if I had used a copying machine to copy these as handouts and handed them out to them. They will have a copy, and the name of their copy will be their name dash second reading, for instance. So they have an individual copy. If they want to edit it, take notes on it, use it for whatever purpose, they have their own copy because I've picked make a copy for each student. This makes it very easy for students to download the resources that you're providing them with or print them if they need to for their learning style. When I'm ready and I feel good about this assignment, I'm going up here. I can choose Assign, or let's check out this caret next to Assign. I can schedule this if I want it to appear later in the course. I tend to not to do that with these sort of boilerplate categories like required reading, recommended reading, because I like my students to have all of their resources from the beginning of the course in case they want to read ahead, check out research papers I've posted earlier on. I can save it as a draft if I think, oh yeah, there might be something else. Maybe I want to add another article to this and I have to go and find it first. I might save this as a draft and then come back to editing later. If I save as a draft, my students can't see it until I actually hit Assign. For now, let's go ahead and hit Assign. Then you'll see required reading, due May 14th, has just appeared in my second week course meeting. So, something that I find very convenient is actually if you're doing these boilerplate sort of folders for each week, instead of creating a new one, instead of doing that whole copy and paste that I did before, what we can actually do, let's say we want to add our slides to this week. Let's add some slides. I can actually go up here to Create, and instead of picking Assignment, I want to post an assignment, but I want to post one that's very similar to what I posted in previous weeks with just a few edits. And so I'm going to pick Reuse Post. And it will tell me, select the post that you want to reuse. The one that I want is slides. I want to post slides, but for this new topic. So I'm going to click that, hit Reuse, and it will make a copy of this post. This post I originally made for the first class. I want to post slides for the second class. All I have to do is change the topic to the second week. I'm going to give it a due date so that it shows up on my students' Google Calendars. It's ungraded. This is just my slides. These are the slides from the first week. What I'm going to do, simply remove this, hit Add. My slides are in my Google Drive. I use Google Slides to create them because it has some very nice templates for you to use if you're interested in that sort of thing. I'll pick the slides for the week that I'm interested in and hit Add. Right now it's set to Students Can View File, but I want the students to have the slides, their own copy of the slides, so that they can take notes on them. I'm going to pick Make It Copy for each student. And again, I do this for virtually everything that I post. Click Assign, and let's look at where it ends up. So we now have slides in this week as well. And I would go through and do this for each of these categories. My required reading, my recommended reading, my other resources, and my slides. These are in the wrong order though. I like to have them in the order that students will use them. So required reading, then recommended reading, then agenda, then slides. If I click it and drag it, I can just change the order they appear in. So that's how you add assignments. Let's look at one more type of thing you can add in this video. So you can also add material. And the difference between an assignment and a material, in the way that I use them, is I use material just to send information, where I use assignments to give my students their own copy of files. So I use a material for posting my aims for the class that week, or my agenda for the class that week. And again, the material is ungraded. So let's look at adding a material to our classroom. So here is an example of a material. In the first week, I added a material agenda, and I do this for every week. It has the time, it has the topic that we'll discuss for that time, and any other relevant information. So for instance, if I have a guest speaker, or perhaps we're using breakout rooms during that section, sometimes students like to know these sorts of things. So let's say our agenda for week 2 is the same as week 1. I'm just going to grab this content, save it so I don't lose my week 1. Go up here to create, pick material, and again, you could do this by reusing the post, the exact same system as we did for the last assignment, but let's just walk through making a new material so we've seen it. Create material. I'm going to call it agenda. Going to put in my agenda for the day. This goes in week 2. And again, I can always post, schedule, or save the draft if I'm not ready to post yet. I'm going to post it. There's my agenda. I want it to be after the required reading, so I simply click and drag. In the next video, we'll talk about quiz assignments, which is graded work, and questions, so ways to get your students involved and interacting with the things that you post. If you're interested in that, stay on for the next video.